Hi class, welcome to week 6, which is about chapter 11, friendships and romance. So we are moving along in the different stages of relationships that we have in our lives. We talked about key components of relationships. We talked about good communication in relationships and some theories that explain that. We've talked about bad communication in relationships and theories that explain that, and then the escalation and de-escalation of types of relationships. So let's go into specifically the different relationships that we have in our lives, and we're going to break this up over 2 weeks. This week is going to be all about friendship and romance, and then next week's going to be about our family and the workplace. So let's get started with friendships and romance. And we're going to start out with friends. So let me define a couple things for you. Definitions from your book. So if you did the reading for this week, you will see that is the same. There's friendship-based intimacy. And as we've talked about in the past, you've heard me say, when I say the word intimacy, I don't mean sexual feelings towards somebody. I mean this level of disclosure that you have where you feel extremely close to somebody. So friendship-based intimacy is these feelings of warmth or understanding or some sort of connection on a deeper level. And that's kind of what we've been talking about throughout the semester. When we say you know somebody intimately, you know that you have a deeper connection, right? Friendship-based intimacy is kind of all those warm, fuzzy feelings you get when you're around somebody. Then there is passion-based intimacy, which will come up later when we talk about romance, but it's important to distinguish it now because it's the difference in a friendship versus a romantic relationship, right? So passion-based intimacy is feelings of romance and feelings and sexual feelings. And then finally, in front of you, you have the definition, kind of the textbook definition of a friendship. And that is a relationship of choice that exists over time between two people who share a common history. And I kind of emphasize the word choice because obviously you have a choice in whether you want to be part of a friendship or not. I understand sometimes it's an easy choice. Sometimes there are dynamics that influence the choice. But nonetheless, it is a choice that you make to be in a friendship. So, how do we make friends? How do we meet people in our lives and then you spend more time with them, you get to know more about them, and you would call them a friend or a best friend or a really good friend? How does that happen in our lives? Well, the first thing is that there is a connection on the level of attitudes, values, and beliefs. When you become friends with somebody, you somehow share the same attitudes, values, and beliefs, or at least have a shared meaning between a combination of them. You don't always have to have the same shared attitudes, the same shared beliefs, the same shared values, but a combination of similar will help you establish a friendship with somebody. Expectation that the other person wants to spend time with us, likes being around us. That is the second part to how we make friends. And remember, expectation is set by you, but the expectation from that other person that they want to be around you. They want to spend time with you. They want to spend time doing things that you both enjoy, talking about the same things, influenced by the same things, all of those types of areas that set the expectation of the other person. The third one, and this isn't new because we talked about this a couple weeks ago when we talked about self-disclosure and how interpersonal relationships rely on it. But reciprocating self-disclosure means that the more you self-divulge to somebody about things that affect you, influence you, make you happy, make you sad, whatever those things are that allow somebody to increase their level of self-disclosure, that then happens back with somebody. So you share something that's very important to you, they also do. They come to you with a concern or question or a problem they need help and advice solving. You do the same thing back to them. Friendships that typically don't last are the ones that are just one-sided. And we might have personal experience with this, or you know somebody that does, where relationships dissolve because you feel like you're always the person that's going to somebody else, setting up the events, asking them how they're doing, genuinely wanting to know what's going on in their life, and they're not doing that back to you or back to the other person. So it has to go both ways in order for us to establish and make friends. The fourth one is proximity. And this actually branches out into a couple different things because obviously proximity means how close you are to somebody, how physically close you are to somebody. But remember, we live in a day and age normally where we have a lot of technology. It's very timely now where I tell you because we are relying on that technology to connect with all the people that we love in our lives. So, proximity is important because that means you can get together and you can do things face to face, or you can have some sort of shared experiences together at some point. But it doesn't necessarily always mean that, because proximity can mean how close you are in making those connections. So, how often you make those video calls, how often you pick up the phone, those types of things are what will help as well. So, yes, proximity does mean, how often you can physically see each other face to face and be close or do things together. But it can branch out, especially with the way technology is today. I think I've mentioned in the past that my very best friend lives in Atlanta, Georgia. And I don't know how much I shared with you about her background or how she moved, but we've actually been friends since we were 4 years old in preschool together. Our parents said that we always just kind of naturally went together and played together and always just kind of stuck by each other's side. And as we got into grade school, we had a couple classes together. Like I think we were in second grade together, and we kind of established a friendship, as little kids do, that evolved into a pretty close kind of like bond that we had in middle school. And then she moved to Atlanta, Georgia, because her dad got transferred there for work the summer between our seventh and eighth grade year. We've been friends for 30 years. So as you can imagine, that didn't break apart our friendship. When we were younger, we would write letters to each other. We would talk on the phone. Our parents would limit the amount of time we could talk on the phone because, back then in the 90s, you had to use calling cards and long distance charges. But then when we got out on our own and went to college and kind of started establishing our own lives, we made it a point that we would physically see each other twice a year. And now that we're working adults, it's easier to make that happen because we have the money to do that and we have the ability to take time off work and so on and so forth. But that is a huge thing. You have to, if proximity is going to be a barrier in a way, you have to do things that make yourself available to the other person when proximity isn't necessarily available to you. And the reason why I tell that story is one, because we made it work even though we weren't close to each other and going to school together every day and seeing each other on important things like homecomings and proms and Saturday night or Friday night football games or Saturday night movie night and things like that. That wasn't part of our growing up because we couldn't do it. But it lends itself nicely to number 5, which is how accessible or available you make yourself to your friends. And so I can further use this example because we made sure that we made ourselves available to each other. Growing up, obviously, it was things like phone calls and writing letters and returning those letters and, going back and forth. We used to mail pictures to each other of things that we did. This is back when you had to drop cameras off at like a Walmart or a Target type store, and you had to wait 3 to 5 days to get the pictures back. But then we would then mail pictures back to each other so we could share our life experiences. And it was kind of cool because in that way we actually got close to each other's friends. So even though we live 750 miles apart, I'm actually pretty good friends with some people of hers from high school, and she is with some of my friends as well. So those types of things you do to make yourself available. Think about it nowadays. Accessible and available. How often do you answer that phone call? How often do you answer that text message? How often do you reach out to somebody and want to know how their day is, or follow up on a big event that happened, or make time for events that you enjoy, whether it be meeting for dinner or going for walks or going to a concert together or going to some sort of a social event that you enjoy together. The fact that you carve out time for the other person, or the fact that someone else carves out time for you, is an important part of how we make friends, because we wouldn't be able to have expectations of other people or learn what our attitudes, values, and beliefs are, or somehow give a level of self-disclosure if there's not the availability of that person to spend time with you, to speak with you, to have conversations with you, to have in-depth conversations with you. Those are all very important characteristics to how we make friends, to how we establish relationships and keep them. So if we were in class I would stop at this point and fiddle with the projector for a minute to somehow get the whiteboard up. And then we would go around the room and talk about qualities of a friendship. And I would just what I typically do is have people just call out whatever values are important to you in a friendship. So if you want to, pause the video for a second and get a piece of scratch paper and just make maybe 5 or 6 things that you think are important in a friendship. Okay, hopefully you paused the video and you're back now. And so you have your list in front of you. Hopefully one of these items are on the list. So these are the qualities of a friendship that the book and a lot of research in the communication area has developed as said this is what a quality of a friendship is. Obviously, you can have multiple ones of them that keep relationships going and moving and keep the self-disclosure going. All these things in front of you are important parts of a relationship, a friendship. You need these things in some way in order to move forward. Now, remember last slide, we talked about expectations, right? This pulls forward, the element of expectations pulls forward two qualities of a friendship. You have things in front of you here that you have expectations about. You have an expectation, let's just say, for example, that people are honest with you. You have an expectation that people are their real selves around you. You have an expectation that somebody will respect you, both to your face and behind your back. You have an expectation that somebody will be empathetic, right? Whatever it may be, but there's expectations that influence these qualities of a friendship. The level of expectation that you have, which you are allowed to set and you are allowed to define, right? But that determines the type of people that you let into your world as a friend, because the varying degrees of these qualities and how important they are to you is what will influence that. So if I could encourage you in some way to write your next journal entry, you don't have to do this, but I enjoy reading the connections that students make between this list and their real life friendships. So if you are looking for a topic, if you want one assigned to you for your journal entry, I would say this is a really good slide to reference. Maybe pick one of these qualities, maybe pick 2 of these qualities and connect it to a friendship that you have in your life and see how these are displayed in your friendship. Or if you can pick something where you know maybe this quality has been broken or this expectation has been broken, it's really interesting to analyze that and talk about how it relates to your interpersonal friendships that you have. Maybe what type of friendship has either stayed long or maybe one that dissolved pretty quickly, right? Those are all things that get influenced that way. So if that's helpful for you at all, that's an easy journal entry topic for you. So one more item before our video ends is talking about the different types of friendships that we have in our lives. So there are 5 main categories that we talk about when it's types of friendships. We have same-sex friendships. We have cross-sex friendships. We have intergenerational friendships, intercultural friendships, and interracial friendships. Now, we talk about all of these and defining them because we know that we all have our own lived experiences, and a lot of items on this list influence our lived experience. And so the reason why these are important is because you establish friendships with people that can help broaden your world, help expand your worldview, help learn something from somebody that you wouldn't necessarily have learned or experienced or can now respect about something because you were influenced by that. Whether it be a different sex, whether it be someone from a different generation than you, somebody that is from a different culture than you, or somebody has a different race than you. All of these things will bring very unique, powerful things to a friendship that will help, again, broaden, but you get to learn so much more about somebody that wasn't brought up like you, that wasn't from the same generation as you, someone that was influenced differently with their culture, and someone that is a different race than you or a different gender than you. Those are types of things that you would never know because that's different about somebody else. But what is different is actually what makes it great because you get to be influenced by things and, again, will help deepen and strengthen the type of friendships that you have. So another cool thing that I typically have students do in class, so if you want to take a moment after this video is over and do that, is make a list of people that are these types of friendships in your life. And then add one thing about them that adds value to your life. So somebody that's from the same gender as you, a different gender, someone's a different age, different culture, and different race.